Thank you so much for having me. Today, I want to share with you my story of how I went from musician to machine learning professional and share some of my tips and tidbits that I have gathered along the way, as well as answer some of the questions I often get. One of which includes, do you need a STEM degree to work in development and machine learning? The short answer to this is no. The long answer to this is no, but. During this talk, I'm going to talk a bit about my journey into the vast world of Python, data science, and machine learning. I'll answer some of the questions I've had from people who have reached out to me since I've made my career swap, with the goal of hopefully giving some insight and guidance for those interested in this vast field. And add some more details to that but. So, to give some context, first I want to talk about where I came from. My unique path to the world of development. So, I studied at university. I studied music at Brighton Institute of Modern Music, and I graduated with a BA Honours in professional musicianship. After graduating, I went on to work as a professional musician for 4 years or so, working on cruise ships and doing events in the UK where I studied. Then I came to Japan and stumbled into a career in tech recruitment for a few years. I worked with data scientists, I worked with machine learning engineers, and other professionals in the tech world. And this really reignited a passion that I had ever since I was a kid for technology. And I found myself wanting to chase that passion, similar to how I chased my passion for music. Then COVID came along and disrupted everything. However, I took this, as with many other people, as an opportunity to make a change and transition for myself. And that is where my journey into the world of technology began. And leads me nicely into a question I commonly get. How did you transition to data science from being a musician and tech recruiter? And where did you start? Well, of course, the answer to where did I start is simple. From data science, I started by learning Python, right? Easy. There's so many resources out there. You've got this book, you've got this online resource, this great website, and this and this and this, and this actually is a little bit of a problem for some people. There's too many options, and quite often I hear, where do I start? What's a good choice? And get paralyzed by the wide array of selection in front of them. It's understandable. You don't want to waste your time going through a 6-hour-long YouTube tutorial just to find out that you haven't learnt the right stuff. However, the answer to this problem is fairly simple. When you're learning the fundamentals, most of these popular online resources will cover everything you need, or at least most of it. You won't find yourself learning the wrong things. So just pick one and start. There's so many great choices out there, and I will give a selection of some of the resources that I think are pretty good and give some links to PyCon to share with you. I personally started out with this book is one that I remember, Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. It covers a lot of the basics, concepts of Python, and then also helps you understand some real world problems that you could solve using code, and puts you in that right mindset of figuring out how to create and solve problems, or create solutions that solve problems. So once I had these core basics down, the step for me was to practice, practice, practice. I wanted to take my core knowledge and apply it to something other than just the clean examples in the book. I found a code practice site called Code Wars, which has a vast amount of community-written coding problems. And I started with some of their easier problems. I was solving problems, I was passing tests, I was gaining confidence. Things were going really, really, really well. Until things got a little bit harder. The questions got harder. My code was failing tests. I was getting errors that I didn't understand. I found myself lacking certain concepts and potential fundamentals. I was still able to solve problems, but they took a long time, a lot of Googling, and an embarrassing amount of copy and paste from Stack Overflow. I felt myself not learning as much before. I was still solving these problems, but due to that copy and pasting, I wasn't really understanding how or why these problems were being solved. I needed to figure out how to level up my knowledge and move from there. So I started looking more into the ethos around data science and more of the topics that I should learn about. And that's where things get very wide. You learn about concepts of Git, GitHub, Python packages, open source libraries, machine learning frameworks and data science frameworks, TensorFlow, PyTorch, scikit-learn, SciPy, NumPy, Jupyter Notebooks, Pandas, it goes on. You have the cloud frameworks that you would need to potentially run some of these systems if you need the computing power. And then the more you look into machine learning and deep learning, you learn it's more than just Python and coding. It's calculus, it's statistics, and it's combining all of these mathematical and programming concepts together to create the world of data science and machine learning. I was vastly overwhelmed and lost into what direction I needed to go into. I needed something to help me. I needed direction. Doing this purely on my own with no guidance was overwhelming. So I started looking into solving this, looking into something more structured. I found three main options here. The first one is one that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, a full-time degree. This is unlike what I said earlier when I said you don't need a degree to get into development. I'm working in data science despite not having a degree, not because I don't have one. If you have the opportunity and the means to go and study, I highly recommend you do. 3 years to focus on your craft and really learn all the nitty-gritty details will set you up for success for a long time. However, I unfortunately didn't have the time to dedicate to this, so this wasn't an option that I took in the end. Second option that I saw in front of me were online coding and data science courses. These are also a great option. I picked up one of these and it provided me with some much needed structure and guidance and flow. I started to learn a little bit more about the statistical concepts needed for data science. However, one of the main downsides for this that ultimately made me drop this avenue was the lack of direct interaction that you can get with a tutor or a mentor. They do have chats or email systems where you can follow up with the course creators, but it's not as fluid as having a face-to-face conversation or even a direct chat line. So I needed something a little bit more interactive. And that's when I came across the third option that I ultimately went down, which was coding bootcamps. Here in Tokyo, there was a bootcamp called Lewagon doing a data science bootcamp for the first time here. I did a little bit of consultation, learned about the course and how they would approach it, and decided for me, I would take the leap. I quit my job and I signed up for the 3-month bootcamp in the winter. So I want to talk about bootcamps in general, my experience and what I think are the goods and bads, to give you a better informed position if you're looking into this avenue and see if this is the right decision for you to make. One thing that immediately helped me out right at the beginning, similar to the online courses, was focus course prep. At this point, my programming skills were good enough to start the course, as I was told. My main weakness was the mathematical side of things, and this is where their list of curated books that they recommended, as well as online course materials that they recommend, different videos and materials along those lines, were vastly helpful. One channel that really stung out to me was a YouTube channel they called 3 Blue 1 Brown, where they talk a lot about advanced mathematical concepts. They talk about linear algebra and concepts such as matrices and statistical concepts, but the real selling point of this channel is the way that they visualize these advanced concepts that make it so easy to digest and intuit how it actually works. I highly recommend checking this out if you're looking to learn about these subjects. They also have videos on advanced concepts such as how deep learning networks learn. Super interesting. So once I was done with the course prep, it was time to start the course. The course covered all of the subjects that you would expect. The basics and some of the more advanced concepts of Python and how to problem solve in it. Data analytic frameworks, pandas, data visualization, matplotlib, Jupyter notebooks, how to deal with databases and SQL, as well as more mathematical concepts, statistics, calculus needed to understand data science. And we moved on to machine learning, logistic regression, linear regression, random forests, and more. Then we moved on towards deep learning and deploying models, working sometimes with cloud systems. The real pinnacle of this course was at the end, the final project, where you had an opportunity to take all of this knowledge and take something from zero to complete all on your own. We all took turns pitching certain projects, and then people voted on the projects they wanted to work on. Ultimately, my project was one of the ones that went forward, and I decided to mix together my experience and passion for music and technology and deep learning to create a system aimed at musicians or DJs that can split songs into different instruments, either for practice, for remixing, or even karaoke. My team and I, we went on to build a proof of concept web app that took songs and applied it to a pre-trained model based in TensorFlow that was able to split the song into vocals, drums, bass, piano, and accompaniment, and then display these stems on a simple web app music player, allowing users to mute, unmute, and solo the tracks to their use case. We deployed this using Docker. The front end was built with a simple Streamlit application and a little bit of JavaScript, and we deployed it onto Heroku's free platform. We then had our demo day where we shown this proof of concept to a room full of online strangers that we'd never met before. And it was a great experience to learn how to present this and go through the development process. Currently, this solution is offline due to the Heroku free platform no longer being available. God rest its soul. However, I will provide a link to the demo day if you're interested in learning more about it. And I am currently working on improving this platform, and hopefully it will be back up at some point in the future, and maybe I can talk about it again. So the course was over. The presentation was done. We had our celebration drinks. Now, what do I think of the course? What is my feelings coming out? Personally, overall, I thought it was great. But I can't just leave it as simple as that. Let's talk about some of the pros and cons, be a bit more granular. Some of the pros that I think are amazing. You graduate with a core working set of skills. This is probably one of the most important things. You could join a company or a project and you have enough knowledge to at least be able to apply that and start solving problems and coding and being a contributing member of a team. You're now employable. These boot camps are a shorter time frame. Mine was 3 months. They also do have evening and weekend options for people who maybe can't take the time out from work, but still want to try and make a transition. This is a great option for those that want to continue working while studying a new skill. You get access to a large and lively community. They're constantly talking about new technologies that are coming out. Some people are helping people troubleshoot issues they're having with their personal projects. There's people talking about vacancies in their network, helping people find jobs, or discussing new startups. You get great career support. These boot camps live and breathe off of helping people find jobs, so they're very invested in helping you find a new job after the boot camp. If you put the effort in, they're willing to kind of match that and give you what you need to succeed. You get the opportunity to build something unique. A lot of people have taken the things they've done for final projects and created startups from it that have been successful. Some of the cons, however, there are some. You get there's a bit of a lack of in-depth technical course material, which is understandable. It's only a 3-course month. You're not going to learn about the newest sorting algorithms and how to implement them, or how to work with graph-based network data structures and the algorithms around manipulating those. This is where you need to step in yourself after the bootcamp and start learning some of those more advanced computer science techniques and different languages. They're not as widely accepted as degrees. This is changing, however, but degrees, that's 3 years of studying, this is 3 months. And they can be somewhat expensive. Once the bootcamp was over, it was time to move over towards the job searching side of things. And I want to share some of my tips that I learned as a recruiter and also from my time looking for work after the bootcamp. And hopefully this will help you. How to stand out. So you found a job on a job portal. Try to avoid just sticking on the job portal into the black hole amongst the 100 of other resumes that have been put there and just walk away from that. Obviously, do send it into these, but don't leave it at just that. The whole point of putting an application in for a job is to start a conversation. Once you've put that application in, jump onto LinkedIn or something similar in your area and search for the company name and data science manager. You'll likely find someone relevant to the role. Open a conversation with them once you've connected. Hey, I've recently seen your opening for data scientist. I'd like to hear more about how you're applying computer vision to the agricultural sector to help improve automation there. Would you be willing to have a little chat? Or if you want to be a bit softer, you don't talk about the vacancy to begin with and you just ask them about that project. Just try and make that connection. It will really help elevate you above the other profiles that are in there. As long as you make it clear that you're interested in that vacancy, they might be willing to help push you up or even recommend you to HR. Also, while you're doing this along the side, make sure you're keeping your skills going. Hop onto Kaggle, do some of their public projects, some of their competitions. Keep your fingers going, do some personal projects. Just keep your GitHub or your GitLab purring away. You'll be surprised how quickly you can become rusty if you stop coding. These tips and my experience as a recruiter, I think helped me find my job. And now I'm working as a data scientist in Tokyo for a startup called Hacarus. Since joining, I've worked on implementing new anomaly detection algorithms for our core Hacarus Check product. I've also worked on a solution to assess and verify warehouse stock using drone video data for a large warehousing company called YCH in Singapore. We're working on automating their process and we're targeting to reduce their stock checking process by 85%. Additionally, I've worked on a range of other projects in the field of computer vision, time series analysis, machine health prediction, solving real-world business problems, and I'm really enjoying it so far. And hopefully, if you decide to take the leap into the world of data science, you will also enjoy it too. So, the last thing I'd like to say is thank you for taking the time to speak with me. And if you're looking to make a change or if you're working on anything new, I wish you good luck. I'm more than happy to answer questions in the Q&A. And if I can't get to your question in the Q&A, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to have a conversation. Thank you.
First question from our Vito session. From Ben Iglesia, what concepts that you learned from the music industry that you still use right now in the data science field?
Well, one of the concepts or one of the things that I probably learned from my time as a musician is the ability to kind of work under pressure. In the music industry, especially, it can be quite fickle. You don't have many opportunities to make mistakes because it's very quick that someone can disregard you and move on to the next line of a million other guitarists or singers waiting to take the job. So the ability to be able to really put your head down and get what needs to be done and show what you need to show as soon as possible has kind of just been a core skill throughout my whole life that I think has been quite useful for me whenever I've throughout any of my other jobs in recruitment. That was very intensive and pressure based, but I was able to get my head down and get it done. And then going to, data science and working on new proof of concepts and building something from scratch in a very short time scale relatively with some of my projects, being able to put my head down and just get it done is something that I think I very much took from my time as a musician, both studying and working.
Nice. I hope that answers your question, Ben. And now we also have one more from Luigi Del Rosario. So, do you plan on using your current skill set in data science or machine learning to help with the music industry? So, he says that he knows that there are many research centers like in Georgia Tech and Queen Mary that focus on AI tools to aid in music composition and analysis. And there are many applications as well for DS in the music industry.
Uh, yeah, something like that is kind of the dream. If I could blend both of those together and make it the long-term career that I would work in, it's something that I'm very open to. In terms of specific things that I would be doing at the moment, I'm still working on that Mixes platform. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in the presentation, the Heroku free platform is gone. So now I'm working on transitioning it to another cloud provider and actually making it a little bit more user-friendly. As you can imagine, a bootcamp graduate 2-week project to make
Yeah.
something isn't exactly the most fleshed out and best system in the world. So I've been going through that repository recently and cringing at some of my code and working on fixing that over the last couple of months, and would like to get that back out into the world, and see what other potential combinations of music and data science is out there for me in the future as well.
Nice. So that is the answer for you, Luigi. And now for the next question coming from Matt Lebron. What expectations slash how job ready would a totally new person in programming or DS after joining a 3-month boot camp?
So for the programming side, maybe I'm a little less, if it's like a web dev course or something they've done, I'm maybe a little less knowledgeable of that. But my course did have both people graduating from a data science and a web dev course at the same time. And I've kept in contact with some of those guys and their job searches.
Nice.
For me, on the data science side of things, I feel like it does give you a good core working skill set. You're not going to be the best in anything on the team when you join, but you're going to be able to jump in and say, for example, there's a simple traditional machine learning problem where they're using maybe a random forest model for that approach, and they're kind of deploying it in different ways. You at least would have some knowledge of how the random forest model is working and the data set, how to manipulate the data set and look at the code and see what was going on, and be able to apply that knowledge and solving issues in the GitHub repository or something like that. For the web dev courses, some of them do focus on maybe not so popular libraries that are easier to learn, that are more friendly. Luckily for data science, Python is actually a really nice beginner-friendly language. Whereas in the web dev world, you've got things, the most common language is JavaScript, which is maybe not so beginner-friendly for some people. So a lot of courses will teach Ruby, for example, which is great to kind of understand how programming works and be able to understand that programming mindset and how to solve problems. But actually, like, getting into a job, they usually would require some form of like JavaScript frameworks like Vue or things like this. So a lot of my bootcamp kind of graduates that graduated from the web dev course did spend some time after the course doing some personal JavaScript projects or some other frameworks to kind of go in that area, because for web dev there are so many different frameworks and you kind of need to have the popular ones. Whereas luckily with data science, if you learn Python and pandas and scikit-learn, you've pretty much got most of the stuff. And then when you go into deep learning, TensorFlow or PyTorch, which are basically the same but with different names for each of the packages and stuff like that. So for me, it was pretty easy because you do the stack is pretty consistent at this point in the industry. It's probably going to change in a few years' time. But for web dev, yeah, you might need to spend a bit more time learning other frameworks, depending on the bootcamp. Some boot camps are a little bit more JavaScript focused because that's kind of where the industry is. But some of them tend to be more focused on more user-friendly frameworks or languages like Ruby.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said with the data science on Python, since it's more of like structured and consistent with everything, where as opposed to, web development, there's so many frameworks, like there's JavaScript, there's TypeScript, and every other thing, and you just can't, it's so hard to choose when there are millions of choices, right? So next question we have here is from Stephen Daedalus Separa. Where can we get toy data sets to begin learning about machine learning and or data science?
That's a really good question. Being able to play around on your own is such an important ability to have, so you can actually, practice after a bootcamp or learn before or any courses you take. One of the best resources in the data science world is Kaggle. Kaggle is a kind of data science community where people post data sets on there to kind of talk about them and problem solve on that. But you also have companies that go there with problem settings, and they will have a data set and say, we want to be able to, say, for example, it'll be a food manufacturing company, and they want to be able to predict the future sales of their sandwiches. And they would put up a data set of past sales information and a couple of other bits of information about those sandwich products and different ones. And they would have a mixture of data set that you would have access to for training your model, and then they would have a kind of hidden data set for testing your model. And you would build a model and you would do all your data manipulation and feature engineering and things like this on there. And then you would build a model and push it to the Kaggle platform, and then that would then test it on the hidden data set, and you would get a verification of how accurate your model would be. And they use this to kind of do competitions, and whoever gets the highest, usually it's the top 3, would get some form of compensation. So some of them actually have really big cash payouts, which could be kind of fun to try and go for. Or some of them might be, they're looking for people to join their team or something like this. So there's some of those bigger projects there, but there's also a lot of these kind of smaller community related data sets where people are just trying to solve interesting problems with themselves and other people. So Kaggle, yeah, a short answer, Kaggle's great.
Yeah, I've also heard about Kaggle, and I have lots of friends who use Kaggle as well. And yeah, I've seen that it is, I think, you can access many data sets in there and you can practice on your own. That's a really good starting point, just to play around and just do some real world stuff.
Yeah.
And then another question from Julia Camille Las. Great talk, Aaron. In your job search, how likely it is to come across cross-specialized roles, especially music and ML, or is the expectations really to shift to a purely technical role?
So from my experience on the job search, I've only come across a couple of jobs applicable in my area, my time zones and things like this that have had that cross correlation. Most applications of machine learning in the real world right now are solving kind of larger business problems. So it'd be manufacturing companies that are needing people. It would be tech companies like data companies like Google and the large companies, and then there's smaller competitors that are needing people to work on their data sets. You have financial firms that are needing people to solve data problems and machine learning problems in their areas. So these are, if you look at the world of employment in general, these industries are just a lot larger than the music industry. So with that, you have a lot more opportunities for people to apply machine learning to these sectors. Which for me, yeah, I would love to continue working in music, as that was my original passion. But as I said in the presentation, I also had, I was a massive computer nerd for all my whole life, pretty much anyway. So I enjoy being in tech and working on some of these pretty cool fringe things, working with computer vision, working with drone video to solve warehousing problems. Yeah, warehousing sounds boring, but maybe to some people. But drones and using drone video to like analyze and solve problems in that's pretty cool to me. So I'm at the moment, I'm more fully tech in terms of my full-term employment. But yeah, I'm still if a music company needs a machine learning engineer, that definitely sounds interesting to me as well.
Yeah, great. I definitely agree with what you said. When it comes to passion, it's really difficult to um, find a job that is like related to each other. But yeah, we all have our wants and needs and what we can do and what we have right now. So next for our next question here is from Tom Shoulders. So since you started late with programming or data science, did you feel it was difficult to fully absorb concepts during high-paced boot camps versus when you were in university? And any tips or space repetition or good notes that you can go back and reference still now?
Hmm. That's a good question. I've never really sat down and thought about how long it took me to learn and understand some of these concepts. I guess in terms of the world and how it's gone at this point, I think, yeah, as the fact that I am older now, I just recently turned 30, which is a scary number. But in terms of like my ability to absorb information, that may have declined, but I'm kind of in that sweet spot of being a millennial where resources and online resources and learning materials have gotten so much better for self-learning and things like this. So maybe if I was this age trying to transition to computer science 10 or 15 years ago and all I had was books and maybe a few kind of low resolution YouTube videos out there, I probably would have struggled a little bit more. But with the fact that there's a mixture of different resources like traditional books as well as online resources such as Three Blue One Brown, which is amazing for learning linear algebra and things like this. Just the way they visualize it is
Yeah.
awesome. And a couple of these other things, I didn't really feel like I was struggling to keep up or struggling to learn these things. There may be also a bit of a inbuilt kind of affinity to mathematical concepts and some of these things because back in school it was something I was good at as well. So this bit of advice may vary from person to person, but I think with the amount of amazing online resources on there, depending on if you're more of a person who likes to get into books and just read a book cover to cover, there's obviously that for you. If you're more of a visual learner, there's those online resources. If you're somewhere in between, there's obviously online blogs and things like this, which could be amazing. So I don't felt like I was held back by my age. The only thing that maybe would have held me back in terms of my age is I did change career quite late, and if you're in your mid 20s, it's a little bit easier to kind of explain, oh, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do in terms of job hunting. But once you kind of hit late 20s and 30s, you're usually expected to kind of be in your career. So there's a little bit of extra selling I needed to do to potential employers when I was first transitioning. And I had to leverage a lot of my personal network a little bit more to find my first job in data science. But I feel like now that I'm in the field, I'm getting relevant experience. That question is getting a little less commonly asked of me. So
Yeah, definitely. Each person, has its own learning style. Personally, I prefer like visual guides and videos, but I recently also started collecting books, but I've been too busy to touch them, so I've just been hoarding. But yeah, and we also have another question from Angela Pastora. Do you write songs on the side? And if yes, what are your platforms for music streaming and stuff?
so I've never been too much of a composer. I did do a few bands here and there when I was in university,
Mm.
but my strength was a lot in working with other musicians and either doing cover work or like session
Oh,
based work. So people would come to me and ask me to play in their band for their live sets or something like that, and I would work with them to put together a live performance. Or it would be working for like party venues and stuff like this and being the live band playing pop tracks and lively music for those kind of venues. And then obviously on the cruise ship it was a lot of cover music all the way from like
yeah.
jazz stuff all the way to whatever they wanted to do. um, I have had a few things that I've been toying with here and there. I like to do kind of like home studio stuff as well and record my own things. But my MacBook is getting a little old, so it's actually I need to upgrade my MacBook and get back into recording again because it can't quite keep up with the new recording software and stuff like that. So maybe in the future I'll talk about some music as well.
Yeah, definitely. That is some exciting stuff. Personally, I would have really, really loved if I was a singer, but yeah, it's not happening. But yeah, just a request coming from Sir Matt. Can you do a shout out to our colleague Michael Andrew Flores? Since it's his birthday today, and they're saying that thank you for an inspiring talk.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, so hope you're happy, Michael. And then another question coming from Grazel Santos. How different is your experience to jump career from musician to a data scientist? Since like it's very, very different, right?
Yeah, it's a very different change. Luckily for me, well, I say luckily, I also had that time when I worked as a agency recruiter in the tech space for just over 2 years or so. And that actually was quite useful to me because being a musician, you kind of don't really know much about the corporate world. The corporate world is a mystery to you. You're just playing music, you're chilling and drinking and stuff like this. So like spending my time as a recruiter when I first came to Japan really did open my eyes to kind of corporate, sitting in an office, wearing a suit every day, things like this, but also meeting people in the tech field. My clients were mostly either hiring managers for data science teams, so like senior data scientists or data science leads, or project managers or senior developers, and kind of getting a chance to speak with them and ask them about their day to day as I got to know them and help them with their roles really did kind of help give me a bit of an understanding of not just the hardcore corporate culture of my recruitment company, but also the little bit more somewhere in the middle of between the really relaxed musician culture and the corporate culture of recruitment. Development's kind of somewhere in the middle, where some of the more traditional things like wearing a suit every day and things like that aren't really taken so seriously. So that kind of softened my way in there, because as a musician, you don't do a 9 to 5, but you
Right.
sometimes work more than that when you need to. But it's often you start in the afternoon, you finish at 4 a.m. Whereas now it's kind of transition. So those are kind of some of the key differences. But luckily with that recruitment experience, it kind of helped me learn about that corporate environment. Make sure you're on time, make sure you go to all of these meetings, and learning about all of the things that you just need to deal with being in a larger company in general.
Nice. So on that note, I also have maybe a last question coming from Jay Lin. So how do you handle traditional HR people that is, very close-minded and insist on recruiting people only if they have, a certain tech experience or a technical degree? Because they are very common here in the Philippines.
They're even more common in Japan. As a recruiter, I would often bash heads with HR people trying to explain, this guy is really good, you should speak with them. And so that kind of prepped me to understand that they're going to be looking at my resume in a similar way. The crux of this is HR often play the role of gatekeeper more than like facilitate conversations between hiring managers and candidates. This is kind of one of the main things that can be quite frustrating looking for jobs or working in recruitment or any of these types of things. My advice would be, obviously, do the proper application process. So send your CV into the portal or onto LinkedIn, So you're following that process properly and you're not trying to go past HR completely. But then once you've done that, try and get that connection. Find someone relevant to the role, jump onto LinkedIn. If it's a data science role, search data science manager and then the company name, or just data scientist, and see if you can find a team member at the very least. Open up a conversation, start having a chat with them about their projects, some of those things. I did a lot of this when I was first looking for work, coming out of the boot camp, and a lot of my conversations were just asking about people's projects and then asking them, when people join the team, what kind of skill sets are they looking for in your team? I'm new to data science, so I'm looking to expand my skill set. What types of things should I learn? These types of questions will kind of pique a lot of people's interest. If you're being proactive and you're kind of reaching out to people, people could be quite receptive to that. I mean, like, this guy's really trying to figure this stuff out, and they seem switched on and communicative. And then through your conversation, you can say, "Oh, actually, I've applied to this role. Do you think we could talk a little bit more about that?" And maybe if they have any influence within the company, they could mention, "Oh, I've been speaking to this person. They mentioned they applied, and they might speak to HR, and potentially that could help get you through that initial screening." And hopefully get you into a conversation with someone. It's not an easy thing to do, especially for people that, I guess in general, developers tend to be a bit more introverted, and not so willing to reach out. But just simple messages and asking people about their projects and kind of trying to get to know people in the company can really take you a long way to getting past the HR person that looks for keywords, looks for X amount of years of experience and Y degree. And if you don't have one of those things, they're more looking for reasons to remove resumes than reasons to speak to people. So you need to find someone and create that connection to bypass that. It's not a simple thing, but that's one thing. One other thing that can kind of elevate you is working on some personal projects, putting them at the front of your resume. If, say, for example, for me, I had 5 or 6 years of experience in completely unrelated fields. That's on the second page of my resume. The first page of my resume was talking about the bootcamp, the things I did at the bootcamp, my Mixsys project, what I did on it, and things like this. And I managed to fill out as much on my resume about my bootcamp that was 3 months as I did have on my resume for 5 years of experience. So try and keep that stuff at the forefront, because most hiring managers will read maybe the first half page before they try to make a decision as well. So keep the good stuff at the top.